What's up, gang? Welcome to The Greatness Machine. I'm your host, Darius. I'm so pumped to have you here with me. Now, listen, The Greatness Machine, we're about two things. Number one, people who are living their passions. And number two, those who are creating greatness in the world and doing both of these things despite the odds against them. Each episode, we're going to feature interviews with game changers, business leaders, telling us their origin stories, what made them tick, what got them to where they are now. Why? So it can help you step into your greatness within your life, your business, and your career. Occasionally, you might hear a few solo episodes from myself, moi, as I leverage my 20 years of entrepreneurship as a CEO and founder to help you grow and level up in your journey to scale your life and your business. So come be a fly on the wall, enjoy the conversation, and I'm stoked to have you here with me. Guys, welcome to today's episode of The Greatness Machine. I'm your host, Darius. And boy, do we have a special guest. My man, Guy Kawasaki is in the house. What's up, Guy?
You gotta pick up the pace of your talk.
You can't listen to this at more than 1.0 or else you're screwed. How you doing, Guy?
I'm doing good.
Man, happy Tuesday. I'm so pumped to have you on the show. And here we are. We're here to promote the new book. But yeah, welcome to the show, my friend.
Well, thank you. You're about I think the second or third interview I've done for the book. So
all right.
You're getting me fresh.
Yeah, I'm getting you nice and warmed up. Well, a lot to talk about with the new book, so I'm pumped to do that. Do you mind if I do a little bit of housekeeping and we'll get started with the show?
You can do all the housekeeping you like. I'm Asian. I'm used to housekeeping.
I love it. Well, so for listeners who are new to the show, The Greatness Machine, we're about two things. People are living their passions and those creating greatness in the world and doing so despite the odds. My man Guy here is neither short of passion nor greatness. So a guy's been on my list for a long time. He was interviewed by a good friend of mine, Hala Taha of Young and Profiting. And I saw the show and I was like, oh man, first of all, I love the products you support. You're an icon in the tech world and one of the OGs in the world of influence. So really cool to have you here. I want to give our listeners, for anyone that's been living under a rock and maybe is not familiar with your work, I want to give a little bit of your formal bio and then would love to get a little bit of your origin story. Does that sound like a plan to you, my friend?
Just don't tell people I wrote Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
So I have a funny story. Last night, I was in Malibu at a dinner with I'm in a CEO forum, and I'm at a dinner with about 9 other CEOs, and they're running some pretty interesting businesses. And I was telling them that I'm interviewing you tomorrow, and they said, "Oh, he's the guy that did Rich Dad Poor Dad." I said, "No, not that guy. Not Kawasaki. It's very different. Come on."
See, we not only look alike, we sound alike.
I thought it was pretty funny. So what's funny is I distinctly know both of your work. So for me, there was no confusion. But for listeners who think we're talking about Rich Dad Poor Dad, we're talking about the much richer dad here. So,
I should write the book, Remarkable Dad, Mediocre Dad.
I love that. Remarkable Dad, Mediocre Dad. That's the next one. That's book 17. So, guys, Guy here was raised in Honolulu, Hawaii. You went to high school with Iolani? Is that where you went to high school? Did I get that right?
Yep.
So
this is the school that Barack Obama couldn't get into.
Yeah, he's a loser, that guy, whoever he is. I have a funny story about Iolani in a second, but he's written 16 books, including The Art of the Start, Art of Social Media, and many, many more. We're talking about his 16th book here today. We'll talk about that in a second. He did 2 tours of duty at Apple, was the chief evangelist, as well as currently chief evangelist at Canva, currently the host of the Be Remarkable podcast, has had some amazing guests on the show. And we're here today to talk about his new book, Think Remarkable, 9 Paths to Transform Your Life and Make a Difference. So, man, so excited for this conversation. I've been pumped about it for months now. I'd love...
You must have a boring life.
Oh, no, listen, Guy, my heart sings when I do this show. So no, you don't know. For me, I don't have a boring life, and I'm excited for this show. I would love, we love origin stories here, and you've had such an interesting and remarkable journey so far. I would love if you could give a little bit of your origin story to our audience.
How far back do you want me to go?
When were you born? 1959?
54.
54? Yeah, wherever you want.
Okay. So I am from Honolulu, Hawaii. I grew up in a lower middle class area, very, very mixed race, Hawaiian, Filipino, Japanese, Chinese. I mean, everything except howlies, actually. So I guess it wasn't that mixed. And I want to start my, origin story from a school in Kalihi Valley named Kalihi Elementary School, which is this public school. And in about the 6th grade, my teacher told my parents, you got to get Guy out of the public school system and get him in a private school, college prep system, because he has too much potential. And, you're going to waste his potential if he stays in this track. So, thank you, God, that teacher said that. Thank you, God, my parents listened. Thank you, God, my parents were willing to make the sacrifice to put me into a private school. That's Iolani. And Iolani led to Stanford. Now, as I look back, I don't know what the hell I was thinking applying to Stanford. I don't know why I applied to Stanford. I don't know how I got into Stanford. But, God was looking out for me. So I got in and I went. And Stanford was a life-changing experience. And so, if you're from Hawaii, many people are in this track of they stay local, they stay in Hawaii. And in Hawaii, you can run a hotel, you can run a store, you can, work in agriculture, but there's no tech business per se. This is, back in the 70s. And so that's sort of the horizon there. I'm successful. I run the hotel. I run the store. And then I come to Stanford, and it was like the scales were removed from my eyes. I mean, holy shit. There's like companies like Hewlett and Packard not Hewlett and Packard. It's Hewlett Packard and National Semiconductor, Intel, and all that. And I said, man, this is where I was meant to be. Now, going back a little bit, in high school, there's sort of 2 or 3 formative events. So, how when you talk to people and you say, so what motivated you? And they give you this bullshit answer like, oh, I wanted to make the world a better place, right? Well, let me tell you something. So in high school, some family friend gave me a ride in his Porsche 911. And when I got that ride, I said, holy shit, man, like, forget changing the world. Let's just change the car. And then also in high school, like I said, I lived in a rough area. So twice I got hijacked on the bus for like lunch money. And so basically I'm telling you that I got robbed twice and I rode this Porsche. And I don't know if I should admit my origin, but my origin is I had those 3 experiences and I said, shit, Guy, you are going to live someplace where you can have a Porsche and you not get robbed. And that was the motivating factor for me. So that's then simple. I go to Stanford and I see like, holy cow, the ocean's part. There's people who like are building companies and look at how their lifestyles. And then at Stanford, there's this thing called Parents' Day. And so all the parents, fly in or drive in and they meet their precious little jewels who are now at Stanford. So my friends, some of them, like one cardiologist in particular, he shows up at Parents' Day. He's the father of one of my friends in the dorm. And he pulls up in his Ferrari. And I said, this is where I belong, okay?
Yeah.
And now everybody's like listening to this and saying, what a shallow, insipid, materialistic little schmuck this guy is. But I'm just being honest. And one of the lessons that I learned in my life is it doesn't matter what motivates you. I mean, if you're like a, absolute psychopath, I'm not saying that's okay. But generally speaking, you want to change the world, God bless you. You want to make a difference, God bless you. You want to end poverty or climate change, God bless you. I'm just being honest. What motivated me was those three experiences. And at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what motivated you. It's just that you got motivated, because that motivation made me study. That motivation made me work my ass off. And that motivation got me to where I am. So shallow as my beginnings are, the outcome was pretty good. So what can I say? So, if a lot of people think that, envy is a bad thing, it's jealousy and it's evil and negative. I got to tell you, in my experience, envy is a good thing. I envied that guy who had a Porsche. Okay. I envied people who wouldn't get robbed where they live. And so I think envy can be a force for good. And also, I like right now, I envy people who can cross step and hang 10 on the nose of their surfboard. Okay? Literally, the word is envy. I wish I could do that. I am dedicating my life to doing that. So is that so bad that you envy? I bet Christy Yamaguchi, when she was growing up, she envied figure skaters who were in the Olympics, right? Yeah. I mean, I bet you Tom Brady envied, I don't know, Joe Montana. Is that so wrong? So, I'm losing readers rapidly. I should just shut up right now.
No. Listen, I always tell the listeners that I don't care if they leave. This is about me and the guests. So screw them. No, I'm kidding. We love you guys. No, I don't think so. I think that they say that I heard a recent quote, since we're talking about envy, which was by Ryan Holiday. He said, "Comparison is not Comparison is not the thief of joy. Envy is the thief of joy." What do you, based on what you just said, do you agree with that or disagree with that?
Well, I guess maybe the better statement is I am neutral on envy, because envy can turn you into a small, conceited, arrogant little prick, right? Yeah. Or envy can drive you to great accomplishments. Now, I'm putting words in people's mouths, but, I bet you that you could take a lot of people who have done amazing things. Like I would say, not that I know this firsthand, but I bet you Steve Jobs envied Gordon Moore at Intel, right? Or envied somebody who created, some great work of art in Japan. And now that didn't turn him into a little angry little person. It drove him to create Apple. And Apple increased the productivity and creativity of millions of people. So Steve Jobs envied people who were successful. That drove him to become successful. Is that so bad?
I don't think so. I mean, my perspective on this, and I'm someone that's, I would consider myself a person that's been fairly envious of others for a large piece of my life. And I've taken the position that if it's all consuming, then it just makes you, even if you're achieving a lot, it's hard to enjoy the achievement because you're just, and you just move on to the next thing to envy, right? But I think a nice little, a small dose of it, just to stick in your back pocket, I think that's a nice little kick in the ass that people need to be remarkable.
Yeah.
I would agree with that.
I mean, if somebody said, okay, Guy, pick one, envy or complacency, guess envy. Which one I would pick, right? Now, my book is divided into 3 parts. It's growth, grit, and grace. So I think that growth, one aspect of growth is envy. For me to grow in education and work experience, I had to envy this. And then to accomplish that, it took grit, it took perseverance. But then now in the last third of my career, it's all about grace. And that's a transition that many people don't make. So grace means that you realize you've been fortunate. And there's a French phrase, noblesse oblige, that the nobility has an obligation to other people. Mm-hmm. I actually don't like that term because it implies that, nobility, that if you're if you're Prince Harry or King Charles or Meghan Markle or, Princess Diana or whatever, then you have this noblesse oblige because you're nobility. I think the better term is success oblige. That is, when you are successful, you have an obligation to help people also become successful. And to use a metaphor, somebody, something, luck, whatever, opened the door for you. And you have an obligation to not shut that door behind you. And in fact, you should make that door bigger. That's an obligation you have when you are so fortunate to have success. But let's just say not everybody agrees with this theory. Well, they may superficially agree, but they sure as hell don't act like it.
Yeah, I think that there's a perspective that I'm hearing you say, which is around servant leadership, right? Where I've been probably a student of leadership now for, I'm 45, 30 plus years since I was high school. And I think some people have it in them and some people don't. I mean, what do you think?
Well, obviously not everybody has it, but if you look at somebody like Jimmy Carter, right? So obviously the last parts of his life, I don't think he's dead yet, but the last part of his life, Habitat for Humanity, he was serving society, right? He wasn't just sitting in the Jimmy Carter library and charging $250,000 to companies for him to come speak. That's not how he finished his career. And I would even say, not that I know this for fact, but if you look at what Bill Gates is doing with the Gates Foundation, I would say that's evidence of success oblige. So, at some point, it's not the money because you can only spend so much, and it's not the fame and the power. It's like, what are people going to say about you after you're dead? And, well, I can tell you, in Washington, D.C., there's a very few people who obviously care what people are going to say about when you're dead, right? So I think that's the test. Like, what are people going to say when you're gone?
Have you, for yourself, obviously you've had a remarkable career, not to overuse the word remarkable because we're going to be talking about your book, but, when you start thinking about yourself, and have you had that thought about yourself? Like, hey, how do I want people to consider me when I'm not here anymore? Is that something
I think about that every day.
And where have you landed on that?
I have landed that I want people to sum up my life in 2 words. Empowered people. I want people to say, when Guy was alive, he empowered people. He empowered people with his books, with his podcasts, with his speaking, with his investing, with his advising. Guy helped me succeed. And I don't mean necessarily in a hands-on, mentoring way. I think, I can help people, even if they never meet me, never interact with me, with my writing or my podcast. And I will tell you that the 2 most formative books in my life, one is If You Want to Write by Brenda Ueland, Ueland. And the other is Mindset by Carol Dweck.
Yeah.
And Carol Dweck's book is all about the growth mindset. I happen to be friends with Carol, so I know her personally. But Brenda Ueland died before I read her book. So I can't say I know her personally. But I'm telling you that Brenda Ueland made my life better and enabled me to succeed. And we will never meet. Well, we might meet in heaven, but we will never meet. And so, Brenda Ueland empowered me. Carol Dweck empowered me. I happen to know one and I happen to not know the other one. And, knock on wood, after I'm dead, people are going to say they read Think Remarkable when they were 20 or 25 and they were floundering and it gave them direction. So, Guy Kawasaki's book had an enormous impact on me. And I'll tell you something, I will be smiling in heaven.
I love that, man. Let me ask you a question because, when I was going through and doing research on the show, first of all, I saw that we had something in common, that we both went to UC Davis. I went to UC Davis.
What degree did you get there?
Well, so funny enough, I, like yourself, left UC Davis. I was there for 2 years, and then I was a managerial economics major. I saw that you went to law school there, and then I left after 2 years and graduated from UC Santa Barbara with a managerial economics major. Well, business economics is what they call it there. And so one of the things I thought that was really interesting when I saw that is that you chose to leave when you saw that your professors were trying to change you. And you were a young guy,
okay.
right? So I wanted you to talk about that, because I think that kind of talks about what you're talking about right now, which is, you're talking about writing a book for that. It's going to change a 20-year-old's life. But when you were that 20-year-old or 21-year-old, 22-year-old, whatever it was, you knew yourself well enough to know that wasn't right for you. And I wanted to, and I just thought it was interesting.
Well,
but we both left that place together.
Okay, so this is a complicated story. So to give the listeners the total story, as I said, I'm from Honolulu, and my father and mother never went to college. But my father was very successful as a politician. He became a state senator. And his dream for his kid was, you go to law school and someday end up in politics, right? So because I'm a good Japanese American, and this is the 1970s, back then, if you're Japanese American, you're supposed to be doctor, lawyer, or dentist. And so I go to Stanford and I enroll in this pre-med class that you do rounds at the Stanford Hospital. And I swear to God, first day I faint. So I figure, you know what? Maybe medical's not for you. And then I thought, man, do I really want to stick my hand in people's mouths for the rest of my life? I don't think so. So what was left was law. So I apply, I get into UC Davis Law School, I go there, and I was freaking miserable. This is the first time in my life I really, chickened out. I could not stand just the intimidation of the case method that, Mr. Kawasaki, please recite the facts of this case. And, and in, Jones versus Indiana, what was the conclusion? Like, I couldn't handle that. And so I quit after 2 weeks. And, now, decades later, I can say that quitting, I don't know if it was a pivotal origin story that made me take the right track, but it certainly didn't hurt me, right? Now there's a lesson there too, because I think everybody has this fear of the slippery slope, right? So at an extreme, you quit violin class, or you quit AP calculus, or you quit law school. And the slippery slope means that now you're screwed. You're a quitter. The rest of your life, you're a loser because you quit violin class at 6. And I am living proof that that's not true. And so I think, I think you give me too much credit if you're saying, oh, Guy, at that young age, you realized this wasn't right for you, and so you chose another path. God bless you if you want to think that's what happened. But basically, I was just intimidated and I couldn't handle it. I basically chickened out. I never chickened out since then. But so I guess the message to people is, you know what? Like, it's not so slippery, this slope. That, that people change, things change. Now, if you quit 2, 3, 4 things in a row,
Sure.
maybe that slope is looking slippery. But don't make yourself crazy over one thing.
Love that, man. I appreciate the feedback. And so speaking of that, in the book you talk about resilience, and we're talking right now around this idea of quitting becoming a habit or being a slippery slope. And there's the inverse of that from a resilience standpoint would be that we don't just quit until, we know. Sometimes we know right away, to your point. Like, I'm half Persian. So in Persian culture, it's like doctor, lawyer, So, doctor, lawyer, what's the third one? I don't know, professor probably in my family. My dad was always like, you're going to be the doctor. I'm like, I don't want to be a doctor, man. You want to be a lawyer. I'm like, no, man, I want to be my dad was an entrepreneur, by the way. So I was like, no, I'll be an entrepreneur like you. So I get it. I think there's a lot of Japanese culture, Middle Eastern culture, a lot of Jewish culture. It's like you got to be one of the few to make your family proud. I think we live in a different world. You obviously, I think probably being in Stanford and being in Silicon Valley, it opened your eyes to another path to victory. But let's talk about resilience. You talk about it in the book. How do you think that lays up to this idea of smart quitting or quitting, whether you say chicken out or not? I just heard you're like, this isn't right for me. And then you didn't do it again because that's not in it for you. That's not part of your personality. You obviously have a resilience. How do you see those two kind of play with each other?
Well, I mean, listen, if there is a secret to my success, it is grit. That honestly, I just love to work. I love to work. Like even now, where, on paper at least, financially, I don't need to work, but I love to work. And I'll give you an example. So, the Japanese have a term called ikigai, Ikigai, and it roughly translates into sort of your calling in life. What you love to do, what you feel is your reason for getting up in the morning. And I think that that finding your ikigai, and there could be multiple ones throughout your life, is the height of just goodness and, realizing who you are. And I interviewed for my podcast a guy named Mark Manson, and he wrote The Subtle Art of Not Giving a F-U-C-K. And he told me something that has stayed with me since I interviewed him, which is you will know you found your true calling when your true calling involves stuff that other people consider shit work they don't want to do. Right. So you as a podcaster, you understand that podcasting has a lot of shit work to it. Like you got to do the research about the person. You got to record it. I don't know about you, but we do a lot of editing of every interview.
Yeah.
So, and then there's two schools of thought with podcasting. One is you turn on the recorder and if your speaker says, let me think about that. If they say that 250 times, you leave it in because you're being true to life. You're actually representing accurately what the person said and how he said it or how she said it. I have the opposite theory. My theory is I take out all those filler words. My job is to make the person look as remarkable as possible. And so when you listen to my podcast, it's very, very clean. Now, this takes hours to do because some ums and ahs you should leave in. Some ums and ahs are just fillers. So we have myself and others, we go over this. We probably spend 10 to 15 hours editing per hour. And I will tell you, so at the beginning of my podcast, I never record the introduction as I'm interviewing the person because I feel that I will learn things in the podcast that I will want to introduce in the intro. Mm-hmm. So I can't do the intro because I don't know what I'm going to learn yet, right? There might be some great story that, like if you were introducing me to this podcast, if you did the intro after, you might say, you're going to hear Guy explain why envy is a good thing. So keep listening. Now, you would not have known that if you tried to record the intro when we started this, right?
Right.
And so I will tell you that this 60-second intro and the 30-second outro, it usually takes me an hour to record that 90 seconds. Take after take after take, rewriting the script. And so that's the kind of shit work that podcasting involves. And when you write a book, you have to edit your book literally hundreds of times. That's also shed work. But when you find that you love editing your book hundreds of times and you love, spending 60 minutes to get 90 seconds, that's when you know you've discovered your ikigai.
I love that. I did an episode of Solo called Finding Your Ikigai in 2024. And I think you're kind of hitting on it. I'd love your thoughts on this, where I said, you've found your ikigai when you feel that good stress to get and that good stress when you're doing good work, but there's a little stress involved because you want to make sure it's done well.
Right.
Is that kind of what you're saying essentially? Or at least a component of it? I must
admit, I don't feel stress per se editing my book or editing my podcast. I just feel this absolutely obsessive compulsive syndrome that I want to get this perfect. And I want, like in my tests, I'm going to show you more of my insipid shallowness. In my test, I always fantasize that Terry Gross or Malcolm Gladwell or Stephen Dubner is listening to my podcast and they're saying, shit, he's a better interviewer than I am. That's my goal. Everybody has to have goals, right? That's my goal.
I love it, man.
I want to be the best interviewer in all of podcasting.
I love it. So speaking of that, like you've obviously interviewed some pretty amazing people. If you were to characterize one thing that most of them have in common, like a thread of commonality amongst these remarkable folks, what would that one thing be?
I think it's, well, I have to say only one. I mean, you're limiting to one. If you limit me...
More than one. Go for it.
I think, well, I wrote this book, Think Remarkable, based on 200 interviews, right? And my 40 years of experience. And I divided the book into 3 sections: growth, grit, and grace. So guess what? Remarkable people, they grow, they're gritty. And at the end of their career, they're gracious. That's it. And I can't think of an example of remarkable person who didn't grow, work hard, and then decide they have a success oblige. And I've had 200 episodes, and let's just say that people need to understand that my book is called Think Remarkable. My podcast is called Remarkable People. It's not Think Rich or Think Famous or famous people or rich people. It's remarkable people. And so we turn down about 10 people a day for people who want to be on our podcast. And I think I have 1 billionaire on 200 episodes. I have had more convicted felons than billionaires on my podcast by a factor of 3 or 4 or 5.
Yeah.
I happen to love the stories of people who turn their life around.
Yeah, me too.
And, a few weeks ago, I interviewed an artist named Halim Flowers. And Halim Flowers, many people think that he is the next Jean-Michel Basquiat. And he was sentenced at 16 to 22 years for being an accomplice in a murder. All right. And 5 years he got out. Excuse me. He was sentenced to 44 years and he got out after 22 or something like that. And, like now he's this brilliant artist. He made a painting for me and he's completely turned his life around. And, like, I think that is a much more remarkable story than, say, Eric Trump. Okay. Like, Eric Trump never going to be on my podcast. I will die before that happens. And so that's the kind of test for me.
Yeah. Eric Trump dealt with his dad. Shit. So what, talking about the book, I mean, first of all, congratulations. Obviously birthing a book is like birthing a baby and you've done it 16 times now. So huge congratulations.
I'm all stretched out.
Yeah. So let me ask you a question. On it sounds like there's a lot of learnings from the podcast that are parlaying into the book. You talk about these three key elements. The subheading of the book is essentially around these 9 different paths, right? So 9 paths to transform your life and make a difference. Do you mind talking about those a little bit?
Well, actually, okay, this is another great story. Listen, I'm a guest like no other, all right? And I don't necessarily mean that's a good thing, but I wanted the subtitle of my book to be, think remarkable, how to make a difference. That's it. That's what I wanted.
Mm-hmm.
But my publisher said that subtitle doesn't cut it. It's not sales and marketing and, promotional enough. So they came up with like 9 paths to transform your life and make a difference. So basically the 9 paths, there's 3 sections and 3 chapters each. And it's about, growth and resilience and leadership and graciousness. So those are the 9 things are the 9 chapters, and the 10th chapter is a concluding chapter. So just for you book authors, just so you know that the process of getting a book published involves a lot of compromise. And I will tell you, I probably spent more time figuring out the subtitle than some of the concepts in that book. Holy cow. So if any of you are writing a book and let's say you're like extremely successful and extremely famous, or you have these great, compelling stories, and all these publishers are pursuing you, and you have these agents, like I'm telling you, this is the fantasy, right? I'm telling you right now, put in your contract that you control the right to approve the title, subtitle, and cover. Put that in the contract, that it's your title, your cover, and your subtitle, subject to the feedback of your publisher, but try to get that in your contract.
That's funny, because they're like, no, Guy, they need a concrete, path or strategy, so that they'll like. I'm like, no one's buying the book because of that. That's so funny, man. I looked at it. I was like, okay, well, I don't know what that means, but I know what the remarkable part means, and obviously they're buying it because they respect the other 15 books you've done and your body of work, right? So that is funny. I think there's some. I mean, look, there's something to be said about marketing. Obviously, you're a big guy in the world of sales and marketing, so you can appreciate it. But yeah,
well, if I'll tell you, I'll give you a little secret about Silicon Valley. So in Silicon Valley, we throw a lot of shit up against the wall, and 0.1% sticks. And then we go up to the wall and we paint the bullseye around what's stuck, and we say, we hit the bullseye. Aren't I so brilliant? So I'm telling you this story because if the book does really well, I'm going to say, yeah, it was the subtitle that I came up with. And if the book fails, I'm going to say, I told those people that subtitle wasn't the right one. So either way, I'm going to win.
As you know, Guy, success has many fathers and failure is an orphan. So, oh man.
Well, successful books have many fathers, and failure books is only the author.
It's all your fault. Yeah. So I had, like I mentioned earlier, I'm reading the Steve Jobs book by Walter Isaacson right now.
Yeah.
I'm actually almost done with it, and your name pops up in that book. You were there twice, and this is just, again, my own selfish question. What was it like working there in the early years? I mean, you were there a couple years after the IPO, just before the Mac. In reading the book, it sounded like an amazing time to be at Apple. Well, it sounds like an intense time as well.
Just to factually correct you, I worked in there from 93 to 97 and 95 to 97.
Oh, shoot.
And
Okay.
Apple actually started in the mid 70s. So like I don't know how I can remember this, but my employee number was something like 5410. So I was the 5,410th employee of Apple. So it's not like it was me and Steve and Woz in the garage. That would be overplaying my significance. So working for Steve Jobs, I mean, basically everything you heard about working for Steve Jobs is true. That he was extremely demanding, extremely short with people. He ran over people. And I'm painting all this scary picture of him because, he intimidated me. I thought law school was intimidated. Then I met Steve Jobs. And yet, as I look back, I would not trade that experience for anything. Don't get me wrong. I still have PTSD, but I am where I am because of Steve Jobs' influence. And I don't mean, when people say that, usually they mean because Steve Jobs was a mentoring, patient, loving father figure who guided you. That's not what I mean. I mean, he scared the shit out of me and he made me do the best work of my life because of pure intimidation. And he showed me what's possible. And he also showed me that, maybe not everybody, but there are enough people who care about elegance and design and product quality. So yes, there's examples of shit that has succeeded, but that doesn't mean you should go out and purposely make shit because you can find shit that succeeded. So he had an enormous influence on my life. And, he's truly one of the most remarkable people I've ever come across.
Yeah, that's I'm like, I don't know if anyone out there thinks of him as like a, patriarch, like pet you on the head, like put his arm around you and be your buddy type. I mean, I didn't see him like that. I'm reading this. I'm like, yeah, this seems about right. I mean, it seems like he was a pretty complicated guy.
Yeah.
So when you, after you left there, you obviously were a huge evangelist of the product. You did a lot of writing in the Macworld world. What was it about the product? I mean, I'm a huge Apple lover. I like the elegance. I like the simplicity. I like the way, the thoughtfulness around the product. Is that kind of what drew you to it? Give me some thoughts around that.
Well, I think that the key to Macintosh was that kind of like how I want to be remembered. It empowered people. So it made people be more creative and productive, right? And it allowed you to do things that you had been doing before, but so much less efficiently. And in a way, Canva and Macintosh are good bookends on my career because I think that Macintosh enabled people to do things more creatively and productively. And so does Canva. And so now, between Apple and Canva is a few decades where I was hitting and missing. But Canva and Macintosh, they're all about empowerment. And so I think that, Steve Jobs was about empowering people. And, you're right. He wasn't the kind that patted you on the head. But I will make a case here that as you look back in your life and you say, like, who really was an influence? Who really made me successful or motivated me or whatever, right? I think you're going to say it was the most difficult teacher, the most demanding coach, the most demanding boss. When you're in the middle of it, you may hate it, right? Too much homework. The coach made me run, till I dropped from exhaustion, and he made me shoot 1,000 free throws every day. And, he threw the chair in the middle of the game at me and all that. And this boss made me work 60 hours a week and, none of this remote bullshit, and I think now it may take you 20 years. Don't get me wrong, because it took me 20 years to realize that the the most influential teacher in my life was my English teacher in high school, who was the toughest teacher I ever had. And so when you're in the middle of it, you're always looking for the easy teacher and the easy coach and the easy boss. But I would make the case that those people are not helping you. Ultimately, it's the toughest ones.
I love that, man. By the way, if you don't know this, I just marked this clip because I was like, this is the juice right here. And I think that there's like, I'm Gen X. I grew up with immigrant parents. So like I was a Division I wrestler in college. So you're speaking my language. I do think that there is, in fact, that's why I said Iolani, that you guys had a good wrestling program like that high school did. So that was my connection there to that. But one of my,
I know several wrestlers. I actually interviewed one named Tim Kendall, and he was president of Pinterest, and he was the guy who figured out Facebook's monetization strategy. And I have a theory about wrestlers that, listen, if you're a great athlete and you're a baseball player, football player, basketball player, you know that there is this possibility that you're going to be in the NBA or MLB or NFL or, World Soccer League or something like that, right? But if you're a wrestler, there's nothing. I mean, if people think you go from collegiate, wrestling to professional wrestling, that's not how it works, right? It's completely different. And so if you're a wrestler and you're willing to put in that sacrifice and you're willing to put in all that hard work, and if you become the best collegiate wrestler in the world and maybe you win an Olympic gold medal or whatever, you still might be poor, right? There's no guarantees. So if you're a wrestler, you're all about grit and perseverance. And I would hire a wrestler anytime for a company because I know they can put up with pain and they can sacrifice. So hats off to you.
Thank you. Yeah, I always tell people, I go, wrestling's one of the few sports that is not fun, and you either win by beating someone up or you get beat up. Like not metaphorically. Literally. So yeah, thank you. I agree.
Sounds like entrepreneurship.
Yeah. I always said my first business I started when I was 25, and I grew to like 150 employees in 3 years. And I at the end of it I said, "Oh, this is just like a wrestling match. You just get your ass kicked every day and you get better." So that's a very good metaphor.
People need to understand that when you talk to, I think, successful entrepreneurs, if they're being honest with you, it's never a story of, like unicorns farting pixie dust. That's just not how it is.
No, BS.
It's grit. It's like, somebody once described writing as the process of you open up your vein on your arm and you pour your blood on a page. And that's what writing is like. It's this shit sandwich ikigai, right? I think many people have this impression of writing that, you're on a windswept beach and it's your beach cottage and your kids are all straight A students and they just scored, 1,600 on the SAT and they're trying to figure out, should I go to Dartmouth or Yale or Stanford? And your house is perfectly clean. Dinner is already, prepared, and it's like 10-course, Julia Child, Martha Stewart level. And you now are going to write, and you get your parchment paper, and you get your Mont Blanc fountain pen with the 18-karat gold nib, and you sit down, and the words just flow from your brain onto the gold nib. And you turn in that draft, and your editor says, "Oh my God, this writing is perfect. We don't need to do anything. And I love your title, and I love your subtitle, and I love your idea for a cover." And then Oprah says, "I want you on my show." And Terry Gross calls up and says, "No, don't go on Oprah's show. Go on Fresh Air." If you think that's what writing is like, you're hallucinating.
I learned the first draft. I wrote a book, and when I was writing it, my publisher said, "Listen, the first draft's called a vomit draft for a reason, because you get all the words out, and it's not supposed to look pretty."
Oh, okay. Okay, I swear to God, man, you and I are soulmates, because I believe, and I have used this before, so I'm not just, blowing smoke. I'm telling you, I have told people, writing, the first step is you vomit everything onto the page as fast as you can. And then for the next year, you're picking out little pieces of nutrient and getting rid of the vomit. That's what writing is like.
Yeah. I love it, man. Oh, who knew this is where we would go on the show? This is amazing.
Now you got to change your intro.
I do it. I do an intro before the intro. So, so listeners, you'll be hearing about this in the first 30 seconds. Guy,
listen to Guy explain why writing is like vomit. From the author of Think Remarkable, Vomit Remarkable.
Oh, I love this, man. Look, I want to respect your time, and I know we got a little bit of a late start here, but I love a couple things. First of all, the book's coming out, I believe, in March. If you wouldn't mind giving the listeners some how they can get a hold of the book, and then we always have a greatness question, so I want to do our greatness question.
If my publisher, who I truly do love, Wiley, I love them. They're very good publisher, but if they're doing their job, you will not be able to escape this book. It'll be in every airport bookstore, Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Kepler's in Menlo Park, Santa Cruz Bookshop on the west side of Santa Cruz, Two Birds Bookshop on the east side of Santa Cruz. I mean, it should be everywhere. So, I get it's on Amazon already, and listen, if you've listened this long to the podcast, you know that. Listen, I'm 69 years old. Okay, at 69, you feel an enormous sense of freedom. Which, let me translate that. It means I just don't give a shit. Okay, I mean, I'm not worried about looking good on LinkedIn so that someone reaches out to hire me as a CMO. I just don't give a shit. So what I care about is that my book empowers you. And I'm telling you, I took the wisdom of 200 remarkable people: Jane Goodall, Steve Wozniak, Stephen Wolfram, Angela Duckworth, Martha Stewart, Margaret Atwood, you name it. And I took what I digested from them. I took 40 years of what I learned working at Apple and Google and board of trustees of Wikipedia, Mercedes-Benz brand ambassador. And I wrote this book. Now, this book is it's not one of these self-glorification, the Kawasaki way. That's bullshit. This is not the Kawasaki way. This is what I digested from other people. This is not the gospel according to Guy. And I promise you, it will help you make a difference. And just so I'm perfectly clear, this is not a self-help book in the sense of, this is how you need to reposition yourself, and this is how you become a thought leader, and this is how you convince people that, you're worth hiring for speeches and consulting. The fundamental promise of this book is, if you make a difference, if you make the world a better place, and you don't have to be Jane Goodall, you can make the world a better place for one person, a small classroom, a coaching team, whatever it is, you make the world a better place. If you make a difference, people will consider you to be remarkable. And the way you be remarkable is you make a difference. Not that I can honestly tell you that I would be astounded if Jane Goodall or Steve Jobs woke up one day and say, how can I get people to think I'm remarkable? What should I do? Maybe I should figure out if chimpanzees can use tools. That would make me remarkable. That's not how it works. You make a difference and people will consider you remarkable. You couldn't stop it if you tried. That's the key.
Yeah. I love it, man. Guy, the book is Think Remarkable, 9 Paths to Transform Your Life and Make a Difference. We're going to put
What a great subtitle.
I love the subtitle. Is the only reason I'm going to read it. We always, first of all, we're going to put, got to go out there, audience, buy the book. It's going to be on surround sound, so you'll see it all over the place, but we'll make sure we put links in the show notes. So go out there and get the book. Can't wait to get it myself. We always like to end, Guy, with the greatness question here. You've already done it, but I'm going to do it anyway, just to stay true to our discipline of our format on the show. So you ready for the greatness question, my friend?
Fire away.
All right. So what is the number one barrier to creating greatness that you've overcome in your life, and how did you overcome it?
What? This is not such a simple question. I mean,
hold on. I got to pause you here. So in the intro, I'm doing the intro of the show with Guy. He's like, hey, we can get the show started. You don't need to. And what he doesn't know is I was going to tell him that this is a question I asked.
Okay, but wait. Don't you dare edit this part out.
I'm not editing this out.
Okay. So, well, the reason why I'm hesitating here is that question presumes that I consider myself great.
Okay.
Okay. And listen, no one's going to accuse me of humility, but I am not great like Jane Goodall great or Margaret Atwood great. Okay? So this book is about helping you become great. It's not about me positioning me as great. So I don't have to be great to help you be great. I just have to figure out how to get the lessons of great people and communicate them to you. Now, I hope I've done that in a great way, but this book is not about me. This is remarkable dad, mediocre dad. Okay, this is not rich dad, poor dad. I want you to be great. This ain't about me.
I love it, man. Guy Kawasaki, seriously, so much fun having you on the show, my friend, and so much gratitude from here at the Greatness Machine. Thank you.
Well, yeah, you were able to bring me out of my shell.
I'm sure that it was real tough. I really struggled with that one. No, there's a reason why that people love you the way they do, my friend. But thank you so much. I really appreciate you coming on the show, and I'm really excited.
Okay, all the best, and I'm glad you mastered your Long Beach studio. The sun never sets on you, Darius.
Guy, until next time, we'll see you later. Peace out, everybody.
All right.
We love you.
Take care.
You are listening to The Greatness Machine, and that's a wrap for today. Listen, if you love what you heard, subscribe to the show on whatever podcast platform that you're tuning in on so that you don't miss any of our future episodes. We have tons of great people coming on, and we're stoked to have you here to enjoy it with us. Leave us a review. Tell us what you love most about this particular episode. We love getting the reviews. We love to see what you guys love most. And if this particular episode, made you think of someone who's leveling up in their business and in their life, print screen, share it with them. Leaders are the best givers. And after all, we're all here to support and grow with each other. And in case you want to see some of the fun behind the scenes shots or some of the things that we're doing, I'm actually writing about this in my weekly newsletter. Go to www.therealdarius.com and subscribe to my newsletter. We're talking about fun things like business and life and mindfulness and cryptocurrencies and gosh, I don't even know, everything and anything, but it's tons of fun stuff I write about. I try to get it out on a weekly basis. You can subscribe at www.therealdarius.com. And with that said, look, thank you guys so much. I appreciate you. I love you. Peace. We're out of here. See you guys on the next one.
She's my lover.